Welcome to the CLC Monthly Meetup and the Fireside Chat on burnout with Mann.
Yeah, this is not so much of a slideshow or anything like that. I didn't put that together, but just kind of a chat, see what people do around this, and kind of share my own experiences as well. But of course, while I was thinking through this, I love numbers, so I had to look some up. 40% of tech workers experience burnout, and this is a global survey of tech workers, which is terribly huge. And then even worse is 60% of tech workers report feeling physically and emotionally drained. So maybe they don't classify that with themselves as burnout quite yet, but they're drained and they're probably living in that continuously drained state. And unsurprisingly, 20% of them blame it on management or work overload, which is probably also kind of management's fault. Um, So yeah, this is a pretty bad state. I've experienced burnout in the various levels throughout my career, in throughout different industries, not just in the tech industry. I mean, I think every profession, every part of life, you can get burned out from if there's too much continuous stress and you don't have the right tools to help rejuvenate yourself. And it takes a lot to learn that. So from like a managerial point of view, you have to watch and help out your employees as well as watch for yourself and sometimes your peers. So you got to be aware of the signs, right? There's the top signs are like exhaustion. Somebody's frequently exasperated, tired. I mean, we can see this in other people pretty clearly, but of course in ourselves, we know that we're wiped out. Cynicism, which can be a little harder to spot because Gen Xers like me tend to be pretty cynical in the first place. I think a lot of folks are more and more. But
Cloud Leadership Circle is brought to you by Dunyasi Ventures, a leading provider of expert recruitment services. Whether you are starting out or scaling up, Dunyasi Ventures recruitment solutions will give you access to expert recruiters who will find the right fit every time. Contact Dunyasi Ventures today for a free consultation to build your dream team.
I think if it's more constant and like in your face and they're always down about everything, then it's pretty clear that this person's burning out. They need something to get out of this constant state of cynicism. And then there's also negative self-evaluation, which I'm not sure externally we would notice that as a sign of burnout. We would often see it more as a sign of lack of confidence, like from a managerial point of view, but it can definitely be burnout. They're like, I'm not doing well with this, I'm not doing well with that. So from a manager's point of view, I think, help elevate them, help them see the good work that they're doing, can potentially help that. But of course, it's always in your head. Uh, Here in the group, anybody want to share if they've experienced burnout and kind of like what level?
Yeah. I think when I was managing a team, I got extremely burnt out of, managing the staff and all of their like problems and like trying to always solve their problem or trying to always keep them happy or make sure that they were engaged or that they weren't too stressed or that they didn't have too much of a workload, that it ended up burning me out and I ended up taking all of their stress and their workload. And that was actually one question I had for you, Sean. Like, as a leader, how do you kind of manage and balance like protecting your team from burnout without like burning yourself out?
It's really hard. It's probably one of the least appreciated from the people you manage often, and just like society in general. It's a very underappreciated thing that managers do. We take on a lot. I mean, if we're a good manager, right, they take on a lot of their employees' stress. They try to protect them from a lot of things, and you might not see that. How do you deal with that? Probably the same way you deal with every other burnout. You have to find your flow state stuff, right? You have to find what's rejuvenating you and how to get out of it, and how to appreciate yourself, right? And appreciate that you are doing these things, and yeah, and see that good in yourself. Probably at the same time, making sure that you're not completely overloading yourself and not really taking on more than is necessary. Like we get close to our employees, we start to worry about their personal lives a little bit, right? Maybe it starts off in the context of work, but you become friends with them, right? To a degree. So you don't need to become their psychologist, right? Which is easy to start to fall into because you want to see them improve, you want to see them do better. So, setting up those sort of boundaries, I think, is really, really important. And setting down time to write out what your boundaries are, so that you're very aware of these, and really helps just establish that, of course, in your own mind, but then you can express it a lot better, because I think a lot of us don't really know what our boundaries are. Go ahead, Pete.
Is there any data that correlates burnout to the virtual life? Distributed staff. So, do you get burned out more quickly if you are a remote worker, or if you work remotely more frequently than others?
I have not seen anything about that. That's pretty a good question. I wonder. I think the pendulum swings both ways on that, probably.
Mm-hmm.
For me, not going into an office, and the relief of stress of just being able to go from like the gym and my morning routine into my office, and kind of take my time, not get that extra stressor of traffic or anything
Mm-hmm.
else out in the real world that could be potentially stressful on the way to work, is a huge relief. Yeah. Anybody else? What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I think working remote definitely relieves a lot of burnout I felt from being like in the office and on site. I think there's a lot less like obligations and kind of expectations when you're remote versus like in office. When you're in the office, you're like expected to socialize with your colleagues. You're like expected to like attend that after work event, or, cater to like someone else's like needs, wants, temperature, whatever. That I think being in, remote, you can, I think, manage your burnout better, or like curate a better environment for yourself to like be in your flow state, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Pete, like you've been running your own company for like quite a while. Do you think it kind of like differs for like somebody who's like running their own company versus somebody who is an employee, or like as kind of the founder of your own company? Like, do you still experience burnout yourself?
Oh, sure. Yes. Yeah. As Sean was talking, I was like, gosh, I think I might be burned out.
Oh no.
Sure. There are plenty of stressors as somebody running the company. So it is a very small company. We've got a relatively small team. So I'm co-owner and I manage folks. And I totally identify with what you were saying, Sean. It's an under-recognized thing of like taking on how other people feel can be a significant stressor to you. But yeah, there's that in challenging times, there's a fair amount of stress. And what I'm recognizing is I really, really appreciate having a business partner that I can go to. If I was like the only person in charge of the company, it would be really hard to find somebody that I could kind of discharge some of that stress with, that I could sit down with and process the stress with. But that's what my business partner is. In a way, that's what he's for me,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sean, what's your take on that? Like, I know you've ran your own business and you've been in, managing people in both contexts. Like, where did you experience burnout more? Like when you were an employee or when you were running your own firm?
I don't remember when I was an employee only at this point.
Even a manager, like meaning
definitely managing stuff is a lot more. We take on just so much burden, especially if you're running your own company. You now feel like you are not only responsible for your own livelihood, but other people's livelihoods as well, right? If you stop answering emails, you drop a couple contracts, that's going to hurt everybody. So I want to kind of echo what Pete was talking about. Is one of my tips was going to be, you need to find your support system as well. You need to also realize that you can rely on people, because as leaders, sometimes we get stuck in our own box and we're like, I've got to do this. I've got to do all these things. I'm the one that can do this. And you got to let go some of that control at some point and say, this person is perfectly capable of doing this. This is why I hired them. Yes, I'm kind of interrupting their work a little bit, maybe, that I've already prioritized for them or something like that, but I can't handle all of it. I don't need to handle all of it. So that's a huge thing. But yeah. Back to your question, Megan. I think definitely as a manager more, it's a lot. My new role is going to be an individual contributor again, but I'm curious to see how like it's going to translate and how much. I mean, I'm not going to be responsible for other people's workflow so much anymore, but I'm responsible for some pretty large projects. So yeah.
Yeah. So are there any stats about what level in an organization burnout is most common at? Is it bottom of the hierarchy, or is it managerial because they are taking responsibility for other folks?
Anecdotally, I've seen it in younger developers the most, probably because they haven't had time to adjust yet. They haven't had maybe time to build up some of the skills needed as well, of dealing with the stress.
Yeah. Do you think that's because of poor management? Or
it could definitely be. I mean, I've seen it the other way too. I've seen amazing management and still people burn out. It's a hard job, right? Staring at a computer all day long, 8 hours a day, writing code, chipping away at stuff that can very easily become way too abstract and meaningless. It can weigh on people.
Yeah, and I imagine many coders can put way too much pressure on themselves, independent of how they're being managed.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. But yeah, a lot of young folks I see it happen to, much more than I've ever seen any managers. But of course, that's anecdotal. I don't think there's great studies and stats on these. Maybe some surveys out there, but
yeah. Okay, I have a two-part question. My question is what has a leader or manager in your life done that's really helped your burnout? And then my second part of it is, what has a leader or manager done that's really elevated or made the burnout worse?
One manager that I had that elevated it worse was a person who didn't respect boundaries well. So he would text after hours with minute things. And then during work hours, it was often these very minute distractors that he felt were important, of course, but the timing was always kind of wrong. It wasn't, it was interrupting something that I was deep into that was I felt was more important, of course, right? So I was always dealing with this guy with these wild ideas that would take me from in something very concrete to something very abstract and more fantastical. So that huge context shift would really throw things. As far as what has a manager done? Yeah, other managers otherwise, when they showed genuine appreciation, that goes much further, I think, than anybody really realizes. Just looking at somebody in the eyes and saying, thank you for doing, I mean, we are paying you for this job. You don't need to say this part, but we appreciate that you're doing it good. That I don't have to babysit you, that I don't have to even worry about how you're performing with it. I know that you've done it. You can just rest easy. I think that goes a long way with people.
Yeah, I totally agree, Sean. And actually, it's that detail of looking somebody in the eyes that you just said that made me ask the earlier question about, does remote work lead to more burnout? Because I do think it's it's harder to feel an emotional connection between you and your boss or anybody you work with. I think it's harder to feel that when you work remotely with them. That it can just, I think somebody else can often just sort of feel like a person on TV almost, that removed. So I think a leader really kind of does have to go out of their way to forge an emotional connection with you and to communicate their caring and their appreciation, their respect for you, when it's a remote, when this is the venue. I wanted to respond to your question too, Megan, if I could. I think when I think of the best conversations that I've ever had with somebody who managed me and the worst ones, the best ones, if I was stressed out, my manager would acknowledge it and not feed it, not make it worse, but would say it would justify it, would allow for it and say, I totally understand why you're feeling stressed out right now, whereas the problematic leaders would be like, they just try to push it aside. It's like, the important thing here is that you're doing this and this and this and this. And they were just trying to get me to stop dwelling on the stressor and focus on the action. And it's like, well, I can't stop. Part of my brain is over here. You need to let that happen, So I think that's huge when leaders actually acknowledge that there is a valid reason to have a problem or to feel stress or whatever. It's totally valid and reasonable.
Those are really good highlights there. Yeah, acknowledging somebody's pain or struggle or even accomplishments is huge.
Yeah.
Dismissing people's deals is also huge in the opposite way, and we don't think of that often. We don't realize we're like being dismissive. We're trying to relax them, and we're saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. Calm down." And you know how that works when you tell somebody who's really elevating, you tell them to calm down. It does not. So yeah, couple other things that you said in there, Pete, that made me think of stuff. So one, I think we're getting a new term out of this, man in the box syndrome. Yeah, it is a thing, right? We're sitting here, we're in our offices at home, we are communicating through a screen, right, and a keyboard. So it is probably very easy to just think you're a man in the box. But oh shoot, what was my second point? I've lost it, and I guess it wasn't that important then.
It'll come back.
It might. If it doesn't, it's flown away.
As soon as we move on to the next thing, it'll come back.
Probably, yeah. And then I'll hold on to it and lose it because it'll be something more entertaining. But anyway, another thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit more about flow state and like what I want to hear about from you guys. Like, what do you do to help balance the burnout and the stress? What do you de-stress with? Megan, tell us, how do you de-stress?
Immediately, like during the workday, I have a little tea ritual where I'll just walk away from my phone, my computer. I'll go heat the kettle. I'll watch the kettle till it boils, and then pour a cup of tea. And that's just kind of where like I go and reset my mind when I get too stressed. And then like more routinely, I do yoga, and I go to a yoga class, and I'm very consistent with that. And I think that's very helpful for me because I obsess about work and I think about it 24/7. But yoga is like the one place where I kind of force myself to shut my brain off and like not think about work and have that place. But that's a routine that I only developed like a year ago when my burnout was super bad, that, it was really affecting my mental health and everything in my life. So I had to find something that I could do, but also still like work, I couldn't quit.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, I totally identify with that. I'm constantly thinking about work, and I've gotten into this terrible habit of like 24/7 always kind of distracting myself with something different. So it's like, listening to a podcast all the time or having a video on in the background or something, just something, always having something to focus on other than what's in front of me right now. So I've been trying to make it a practice to like, no, actually, I'm going to put my phone down and walk away from it and just have lunch, or just talk to my wife or whatever, just actually be in the moment. And little things like that are hugely beneficial. And I guess the one sort of exception to that, although it's a good exception, is music. Music is I think that's one thing that I can still get from my device that that isn't like a distraction. It's more like it feeds me in a really useful way.
Indeed.
Right.
Yeah, one thing that I think has really worked for me recently is definitely going out for short walks, like maybe like a 5 to 10 minute walks when I've been on my desk all day. And yeah, I really love it. Like I try not to use even my phone or anything like that. Just go out for a quick 5 and 10 minutes walk has really helped me actually this year.
That's awesome.
Yes, getting outside is amazingly therapeutic. We have no idea, or we really downplay it, I think. But yeah, wow. Ashish, how about you? Do you have any de-stressors you want to share?
Go for a walk, long walk.
Great.
I'm lucky enough to live by a lake, and a huge path for running, biking, or walking. People will have their dogs. Just observing people, right? Different people, non-tech people a lot of times, right? Grandmas with grandkids, somebody with a dog, somebody just biking, somebody taking care of their daughter while, yeah. So it's just being in nature, I think, helps me tremendously. But yeah, long walks, that's my favorite thing to do. If I have like 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever, I sometimes put on a audiobook on leadership or whatever I want to read that day or we can listen to. And that helps quite a bit. Or spending time with kids when they're not in school, I think that de-stresses me. They have unique value props. So one day I remember a year and a half back, I was so stressed. I could not figure out something and I was tired, really tired, physically and mentally. And my daughter comes to me and says, okay, what's going on? You don't look that good. I said, yeah, I cannot figure this out. I'm so tired. He said, if you're tired, why are you not taking a nap? And you don't think about it, right? You're so busy solving the problem, you forget to take care of yourself. I said, okay, that's brilliant. That's what I did. And I just slept that day, and next day, I mean, the solution comes to you because technical problems are not that challenging, right? It's just that you get so involved. So those are some of the ones I have, and then I keep problem solving. If I have new problems, I have to keep solving them, even with stress. So yeah, and good to be here. Sorry, I had another call first half, so I couldn't join. So
I'm glad you got here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great. All these are great, but like I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about what she said. Like you're stuck on a problem. You're experiencing a little bit of burnout. It might not be that heavy, but go take a nap if you can. Go get out of the box however you can. Going outdoors is an amazing de-stressor. Might not be able to shut your mind off perfectly. I think for me, the music really helps. I focus on the music, but it's not like a problem, or it's not something deep. It's fairly superficial and more emotional. It's that different mind.
Yeah, exactly. It shifts you out of your logical brain and just lets you be in this more sensory, emotional part of your brain.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to do that. My Saturdays are usually spent all morning outside listening to music, doing gardening or whatever. I think that exercise and being outdoors probably saved my life because they've completely turned around my burnout. I of course still get high stress and I can get to a burned out level, but man, not like it was like 3 years ago where I was burnt out all the damn time. Yeah, go touch grass, everybody, this weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, good advice.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. This was a really great session. I feel like we have tons of action items to take away from here that apply to us all. So thank you so much for a really bringing it today.